to the Work Trends podcast from Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan Mbiro. Every week, I interview interesting people who are reimagining work. And be sure to check out our Work Trends Twitter chat events calendar located at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Hello and welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends podcast, brought to you by our special guest and sponsor, Bountiful. We are so glad you're joining us here at Talent Culture, the place to find meaningful connections at work. And we're still shouting from the rooftops that we have a new website, and we want you to visit us on the podcast page at talentculture.com. And for all of you taking notes at home, I'm your host, Megan Mbiro, and today we're talking about how to build and maintain an automated and scalable referral program. It's a very intriguing topic, and I know we're going to have a wonderful discussion. But before we jump into today's podcast, go ahead and ask yourself these two questions. Number one, does your organization currently have a functional referral program? Number two, if you don't have one in place, do you think your employees would enjoy a reward system for referring quality candidates? Let us know. So let's get started. Joining us today is Scott Sinatra from Bountiful, and we are very pleased to have him with us. Scott Sinatra is the CEO and co-founder of Bountiful, his third HR tech startup. Prior to starting Bountiful, he built and led the early revenue functions at both Glassdoor and Glint, which was acquired by LinkedIn. To all of you tuning in, his experience and passion for helping humans at work has led him to now help recruiters maximize the promise of networking for talent acquisition. We are so grateful to have you here, Scott. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Megan. It's great to be with you.
I've got to ask you, where are you today in the world?
I am outside of Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay area in Florida. I'm in St. Pete Beach.
All right. Well, let's get started. I know you and I mean, we could talk for hours, but what we're going to do, we're going to boil this down together. So let's dive in. So we're all familiar with crowdsourcing, but let's discuss how it has crossed over into the world of recruiting.
Good observation and a good question, actually. So people are more digitally and globally connected today than ever before. Business and social and direct networks are expanding at rapid rates. Just look at LinkedIn's member growth. They're close to 1 billion members now, and 75 million organizations are on the site, and that continues to grow at a rapid rate. The diversity of those connections are also expanding, which is phenomenal from a recruiting perspective. What we've noticed, though, is employers have yet to tap into the potential of crowdsourcing for recruiting. Referral programs, if any, are limited to employee participation only, as an example. External recruiters get hired, for their curated yet confined access to networks and to talent. The post and pray of yesteryear still exists on LinkedIn and other job boards. It's very common, and it's kind of a common stab at crowdsourcing activity. Yet today, it's largely ineffective for truly game-changing talent acquisition. So we are seeing more and more unqualified inbound applications as well than ever before. We've got a big challenge ahead of us.
We completely do, and I love this. I have to tell you, it's a very exciting time for leaders who want to wrap their heads around how to embrace social networking and crowdsourcing. And I'm with you, Scott. I'm surprised not more people are doing this right now. We've been talking about it, but actually doing is different. Speaking of doing and those important things called employee referrals, tapping into personal networks, these have all played an important role in recruitment. But explain how online social networking has changed the landscape and bring us back to, today.
It is true, Megan, that many companies use employee referrals as a source. In fact, in our own research and in conversations with companies, we see about an average of 20% of hiring actually coming from referrals, which isn't bad, actually. It's a good source for talent. However, participation rates from employees when there is an employee program remains quite low. We see an opportunity to expand the use case, however, beyond just the four walls of the company. And this is next level kind of crowdsourcing, if you will. And expanding beyond the four walls of the company to enable anybody anywhere to refer people into jobs and get paid for it is kind of the next frontier, the new frontier. And if we do that, we're going to diversify the talent funnel. Social networking gives us this opportunity to expand reach and referral quality rather quickly. So to your point, leaders, organizational leaders, talent leaders who embrace this crowdsourcing as a new frontier kind of paradigm shift are going to gain a competitive advantage, we believe.
Oh my gosh. And I'd like to add the word now into the equation because that's when we need it. We needed it yesterday, by the way, if you've been tuning in here, which we have been, but we need it now. And I think it's a great example of why I've personally enjoyed watching the world of recruitment blossom over time. And yes, to all of you out there taking notes at home, I am Gen X, I swear. So I've been watching this unfold for quite a while. When leaders are willing to rethink the fundamentals of their talent pipeline, everyone wins. And to me, that's the best.
Before we move on too, Megan, it's really interesting, that people that we speak with daily talk about referrals as a good source for talent, yet it's so underutilized. When I talk to talent leaders about why that is, they talk a lot about the management of the process is cumbersome, it's difficult, it's a challenge. That's all fixable and something that we're certainly embarking on at Bountiful.
Now, let's take a short break to get an update from our advertiser, WorkLeap. Have you ever dreamed of building high-performing, engaged teams in just a few days? Because it's exactly what WorkLeap Office Vibe can do for you. Need proof? Say no more. For example, their automated and customizable pulse surveys give HR and managers real-time insights into their team's engagement, letting them know clearly what's working and what's not. So when your HR and managers team up, they know what to tackle. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of positive change WorkLeap Office Vibe can affect on your business, as this game-changing product offers a set of simple engagement, recognition, and performance management tools. Visit workleap.com/officevibe and start creating high-performing engaged teams in days, not months. Now back to the podcast and our special guest, Scott Sinatra. Let's talk about some of the tips to automating a referral program effectively.
Well, I think first of all, get a current state or an as-is state, if you will, with your own program, if you have one. First, I would have one. But secondly, if you have one, let's get an as-is or current state process audit, if you will. So understand current process friction is what I call it. We see that low participation exists because there are just too many hurdles in the way for people to participate. For example, an organization might say they have a referral program, and in fact, they may have a referral link available for people to leverage. Problem is that referral link is nested in an ATS. And do we really see employees logging into ATSs to grab a referral link? It's a part of the friction of the problem, right? We just see all sorts of barriers here and opportunities to eliminate friction in the process. And by doing so, we'll get more people participating, leverage more networks effectively. And we really believe that employee participation is job one. And when we do that, we then get to kick off the network effect appropriately.
I think it's also important to ensure that this sustainable process is there to stay, right? I know it's super helpful for all of our listeners out there right now who are in the recruiting trenches. They're in the HR trenches. So anything that saves time and, keeps us out of the layers and layers of the ATS, thank you, Scott. So Bountiful also talks a lot about scalability. Please expand upon this when it comes to employee referral programs and how this impacts the future of work.
I love this question because essentially that's what we're building at Bountiful. But we hear all the time that employee referral programs build homogenous teams. I was at Glassdoor a decade ago, and 86% of all of my hiring was from employee referrals. That's a lot. But I also remember 10 years ago looking around the room saying, oh my gosh, we all look the same. Fast forward to today, for organizations that truly want to diversify their funnels, the term employee referrals leads to a little bit of anxiety, especially around the whole idea of building homogenous teams. Now, we believe actually that this is less true today than 10 years ago, and it's really due to the expansion of social and business networks. But that said, the scalability part of what we're talking about here is extending the employee referrals to people and organizations outside of your company, giving you a world of new networking and candidate possibilities. By expanding your program, you will diversify the talent flow through the sheer physics of network effects. We've seen it take place. And both individuals and organizations, such as associations or customers or other groups can be participants. So that's the whole idea around scalability and extending the reach beyond the four walls of the company.
Okay, so question for you. Based on everything we've talked about in this conversation, let's get right to it. What do you see that truly resonates with employees to reward or incentivize them to refer quality candidates? And how does Bountiful's platform help with this?
Rewards, frankly, unlock the entry into these networks. Typical referral programs pay after a new hire has been with the company for maybe 3 to 6 months. We see this a lot. So you might have a 45-day interview process and a hiring process therein, maybe 2 weeks start date after the accepted offer, and then a scout can wait a long time to be paid. Sometimes it can be 4, 5, 6, 9 months in some cases. To them, the scouts, the people you're asking to connect into these networks, this is viewed as monopoly money and hardly an incentive at all, really, especially given our instant gratification society today. People want, faster return on the investment of their time. So Bountiful actually supports a payment policy flexibility, and we offer a recommendation. So let's say you offer $1,000 for a referral. Well, 500 of that can go to the scout or the recruiter who lands the hire. The other 500 can be sliced and diced to reward the behavior you want to see from your recruiters, your scouts. For example, let's say we pay $50 or $100 for a referral that gets into the interview process. And we look at a candidate getting into the interview process as a proxy for quality. If they're good enough to be interviewed, they're good. And so we think that rapid rewards will keep your participants engaged in the process. So rewards activate networks. Changing the reward structure, we believe, will allow more people to participate more readily and engage them more often.
To me, this is exactly where tech and human behavior intersect in such a fascinating way. Getting to the heart of what drives people to care about the growth of your company is as important as the technology we're using. So such a great reminder of that today, that yes, it is possible. There's so much more we need to do here, but we're getting there. So last question that can really, I think, wrap up our conversation well. Please share an example of an organization that successfully revamped its employee referral program and what that really looked like for leaders, for employees, and for candidates.
Let's talk about a chief technology officer position, so a C-level position in this case. The organization spent 75 days with traditional sourcing methods. So internal recruiter, posting on LinkedIn, other sources, trying to extend into their own networks, using all tools available to them for this particular hire. In 75 days, they made no hire, and in fact had a very hard time getting anybody near a finalist candidate in that time frame. That's a long time. So they decided to turn on Bountiful. 21 days after turning on Bountiful, they made a hire with 4 diverse finalists. So for a CTO position, this was 2 males and 2 females for the role. For leaders, the advantage here is that you can fill positions ahead of plan. So in our example, we hired 3 times faster than traditional sourcing methods. And we see this quite a bit. So again, for leaders, filling positions ahead of plan is a great business idea, of course, and it's far ahead of normal today. So you can gain a competitive advantage against your competition, against others seeking, quality talent through using these kinds of new recruiting strategies. For employees, a frictionless process makes it really easy to participate and share roles with their networks. Rapid rewards, as we mentioned before, make it fun and engaging. The idea that I can get some sort of instant gratification or relatively instant gratification keeps me motivated and keeps me in tune. And then this whole idea around communication is that real-time dashboards kept their participants informed every step of the way, thus adding trust in the process. They didn't have to ask for any sort of update, in terms of what was happening with the people they were referring. They have their own dashboards. They can see it as we sync to the ATS. And then for candidates, there's a lot of conversation about the candidate experience, and rightly so. In a sea of inbound applications, it can get lost. And being referred, if you're a candidate, can be a great differentiator. Easy apply, as a term from us, gets them known by the talent team very quickly. Qualification weighting enables the talent team to quickly assess which candidates will actually move to the next stage quickly. And candidates will benefit through quicker talent acquisition team response times. So the whole idea here is the candidate experience will improve if the tooling is right and if there's a reference or referral in place.
Well, thank you for that wonderful example. This really helps connect the dots for our listeners, Scott. You are doing great things, and we are so thankful for your expertise and your insights. Thanks for stopping by.
Appreciate it, Megan. Thanks for the time, and best of luck out there.
That was a fun conversation with Scott today. His knowledge and passion really make this a creative and useful concept for a lot of organizations. Here are a few takeaways that I think are worth noting. Number one, automation and scalability are key in moving the needle on an effective referral program. If you are missing either one, it's time to reassess your systems. Number two, online social networking cannot be overlooked in today's recruitment methodologies. And number three, it's important to follow the research on what rewards and incentives actually work with employee referral programs. It's not enough to assume what people want. You need to know that you're on the right track to build an ongoing program. Thank you again, Scott, for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. And listeners, please be sure to check out bountiful.us. And last but not least, the talent culture community wants to hear from you. How would you rate your current referral program on a scale of 1 to 10, and why? Number two, do you believe that your referral program is scalable? And number three, what incentives have been successful in your industry for employees to make employee referrals? Visit us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram to share your responses to these questions, or feel free to contact me personally at Megan M. Bureau on social or at mbureau@talentculture.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Work Trends podcast. If you love what we do here, make sure to share our podcast with the world and send us a question anytime. And use the hashtag WorkTrends. See you all soon. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. You can hear all of our Work Trends podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and beyond. And be sure to subscribe so you can listen on the go and stay up to date on all the latest news you need. Catch up with you next time, and I hope today's information made you wiser, happier, and more informed.